Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Thursday edition of the Gareth Cliff Show. Here with Phumi Mashiko and I, here to look after you, keep you company. And there she is. There's Phumi, back in her house. She didn't have to rush to the office this morning. However, I'm sitting with some load shedding. I was just getting used to the feeling of having power again, and then they take it away from you. As soon as you get used to it, they zap you. What can I say? Starting to become less every time, but what are you going to do?
I was very glad. I
glad,
didn't have to rush to the office this morning.
Yeah,
because I've been absent too.
Doing what?
Struggling to sleep.
Oh no, that's no good. That's horrible.
It is quite awful.
Yeah. Were you nervous about something? You've got a lot going on today, or anxiety?
I've got a lot going on every day. Yeah, it's called being an adult.
Are you a witch and you were worried about the full moon? I mean, what is it?
It's called being an adult. That's what it is.
Okay, so all right. General anxiety.
Pick any number of different things that it could be. It's like, I have to fill my tank today. I know that the petrol price has gone down slightly, but I actually have to get petrol today. That might have been what was keeping me up. Who knows?
I was looking at just the debit orders that came off of my account this month, and I'm like, how is this possible? How can all of this money be going somewhere? I mean,
it just arrived in my bank account.
It just arrived, and now it's all gone and some. And I'm like, what? What? How? I didn't sign up for all this other shit. And then, as you say, you have to fill your car, and you're like, so it cost me on Monday or Tuesday, one of the two, 1,400 and something rand. I was like, no.
60 liters. You're like me.
Like, Jesus, 1,400 rand. There was and by the way, I went to the shops the other day and I bought, I don't want to lie about this, one packet, one bag, and like a box of nachos or something. That was it. I walked out of there. That was over
$1 million rand.
Oh, it was over 1,000. And I was like, but this is not a big shop. Usually it would be, 1,000 rand is like you fill the trolley up and you've got your stuff for like 2 weeks or whatever. And it's just me. I'm not feeding anyone else. How can it cost this much?
It's just you and Alice.
So how does it cost so much? It's ridiculous, right? And
you know what I had this month, which was really, really nice. And I thought I was due next month, but I was due this month.
Yeah.
Is like a lot of Black women of my age. I'm in a Stockvel.
Oh, are you? Okay.
So and I thought my month was September, but my month was August. So I got my stocky money. It was lovely.
Well, that's very handy. I think I better start a Stockvel. Because that's the extra month you didn't bargain for.
It's just lovely. It is. It actually was absolutely lovely until I realized all of the things that I was going to have to pay for out of my stocky money. I don't think, and usually I would do something for like something, a once-off kind of thing, like piece of furniture or, because that's the whole point of it, right?
Right.
Yeah, I don't get to do that this month. Just take my car in for a service.
Well, I mean, listen, that's a major expense. So there are 12 of you, right? And each, you all pay in, and then 1 month. Okay, well, that makes sense.
That's so wonderful.
I think it's a good system. Plus, you don't really have to involve financial institutions.
Yeah.
You don't have to involve people you don't know, people you don't like.
And it's actually it's such a if you think about it, it's such an archaic little system, but it feels like you won the lotto. It really. So Hydra says, how does it work? So Hydra, you get a group of people, and it You can Stockvel. Sorry. You can have a travel Stockvel where you and a group of friends put away some money every month for traveling or a specific goal, or just put out. So what we do, myself and my group of friends, is we just put in every month. You put in X amount of money, and there are 12 of us, so that money goes to a different person every month. So you put in 1,000 rand, and when it's your month, you get 12,000 rand. So it's like saving, but with other people. And because it's got other people, and this is the magic of it, is easier to it's easier to do it. It's easier to save because you're being held accountable by a group of other people.
I think that's amazing. That's good.
They are like grocery Stockvels. There are people who like save all this money and then in December or whatever get a whole lot of bargain groceries and divide it amongst themselves, and then they've like got 12 tomato sauces in January.
Well, listen, if that's what you're buying.
Yeah, to each his own.
So it was my brother's birthday yesterday, and
oh no.
Yeah, well, I mean, now we're all kind of in this. My dad is in July, my brother and I in August, my mom and sister in September, and then my sister-in-law and my oldest nephew are in like the beginning of the year, and then the youngest one is in May. So we really are spread all over the year. The only time where there aren't any birthdays, and I think it's good planning, if you ask me, are October, November, December. There are no birthdays for any of us in October, November, December. But then pretty much from there on, it's like, there's one roughly at a reasonable like interval from there on. But we all went out for supper last night, which was cool because
that's nice.
First of all, we haven't been out with the kids, to a restaurant which is not a kid restaurant, and they were both so well behaved. That was nice.
So not Spur.
No, exactly, and it was nice. They were very well behaved. They, I sat opposite them and kind of talked nonsense to them all night, and it's lovely to hear how their brains work, and you kind of find out what they're interested in, and you ask them questions about school and about what their favorite thing is to eat and all that kind of thing. And they always have an answer. Like kids they don't waste time. Like, the thing that adulthood does is it stops you from just answering. And even if your answer is stupid, if you're an adult, you worry about it. And you're like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Or next time I'll take longer to think about my answer. With kids, they just go straight away. Here it is.
Did you see the thing on Monday? Yeah.
No. And we had a really nice meal and everything, and it was just nice to do that kind of stuff because we've kind of forgotten, and I don't know about, we've done family stuff at each other's houses and so on, but to actually go out somewhere was very nice. So little things starting to creep back into life that make it livable.
That's awesome. Cool. Talking about kids and the fact that they have no filters, this on Monday in the US was the start of the new school year. So, obviously, lots of little people, and the start of the school year with all the new entrants is always
summer vacation, right? That's what they have.
It's always fascinating to see that. And the New York Times has weekly. They have a thing about viral tweets from parents about their kids, which are always funny. But on Monday, so this would have been our Tuesday morning, we woke up and there was a tweet that went viral in New York of a new teacher. So first day at school, young teacher, and he is a kindergarten teacher. And his tweet was about how one of the little kids in his class wouldn't look at him all day because she was just like, I don't want a boy teacher.
Oh, shit. Well, these days you don't know what gender your teacher is, and you dare not ask in case they're gender non-binary and start confusing the kids at age 3. So that's also. Have you seen these TikToks of these teachers with like very short purple hair, or they shaved on the one side, and they're like sitting there and like, I'm so excited that my kids asked me today if I'm gender non-binary. You're like, no, they didn't ask you. You started talking about
No,
it.
I
through
don't see.
notifications.
I
No, you
don't
got to
see
see it.
those things.
There's this account I follow on Instagram or on Twitter, I think it is. It's called Libs of TikTok. Oh my God, it's hilarious. And it's these total, like, unhinged lunatics who are like, they're so in their navel gazing deep down the tunnel of, self kind of immolation and worship, that these people are, you actually, you can't believe what you've seen half the time. There was this teacher the other day, Pumi, and I don't know, like, as a parent, I'm not sure how you would react to this. I think I would just, I'd take my child out of all public education and hide them in a forest somewhere, and make them hunt for their food and grow vegetables rather than learn about the stuff that they clearly would learn from these. I mean, look, I don't think it's that bad in this country, but there are these very strange people who are like talking to kids pretty much about themselves the whole time. And then they get on TikTok, and when other people watch them and disapprove of this, they're like, why are you in, this is my place for free expression. How can you like say horrible things about me on TikTok? But they've put this video up of them kind of talking about themselves in these weird and inappropriate ways to children. And I think you're putting this stuff out there. How do you expect everyone to just love you? And then it suddenly occurred to me while I was watching one of these the other day that all people have been conditioned to think that whatever you put on social media, you must receive love for. And that's just obviously not the case, right? I mean,
I don't think that's. I do not think that's the way South Africans approach social media at all. I think as South Africa's social media it's that place. You venture out onto those streets and you never know you never know what kind of ridicule is coming your way.
Then that's a good thing. That is a good thing, trust me.
South African? I think South African social media is possibly the coolest and simultaneously most terrifying place in the world, because at any one moment, like, people could get unhinged on you,
right?
And people will make so much fun out of whatever you're saying. They will tease you to death. I think it's worse than like a schoolyard, but it's also very entertaining for the rest of us.
That's what you need. I mean, if social media if it's all friendly all the time, it would be horrible. And if it's all horrible all the time, it would be beastly. And you just wouldn't want to be there. But there's a happy medium somewhere in between. I'm not sure we found it. I'm not sure that we're better at it than anywhere else. But I still think if South Africa is tougher on people, then that's probably better. So let's take it rather than this place where everybody expects everybody to be nice to you all the time. It's ridiculous. We had Ask Jane on yesterday, which was hilarious. Oh, people loved it, and so there were two reasons to have her on. First one was she was looking for a job for the other 3 days of the week where she's not with us, and the other reason was that just we needed to catch up with her. Now, Jane is like a human version of what you've just described on like the mean streets of Twitter, because she doesn't mince her words. She's not looking to be anyone's friend. She says exactly what's on her mind, like I was saying about the kids earlier. And I think people loved it because the comments have kept rolling in, and they loved Jane. I mean, she tore a strip off of pretty much everyone. She didn't say anything horrible about you, though, Pumi, because I don't think she's seen you in a while.
I haven't seen her in a long time. Jane and I get along.
No, I think she's quietly
we get along, and I've known her for longer than I've known Cliff Central.
That's true. So did I. Yeah. So a lot of people still talking about Stockvels here. So Malusi says Stockvels operate on shame as motivation, and it works. Well, I don't know about
Not they don't.
I don't think it's shame. Do you really? That's
no.
Malusi, I think it's more like cooperative than it is shame. What's the shame part of it?
especially because it's you get into a Stockvel. There are two parts I think that make it work, and I don't know if it's
Hmm.
shame is a big one, but the first one
Yeah.
is trust, is collective trust.
Right.
You kind of you trust
Do
each
you guys
other
put
to
it into
show
a
up.
bank account, or where do you put it?
Yes, yes. So we've got an admin.
Oh,
Admin.
hmm.
We've got an admin who reminds everybody on, kind of the 4 days before the end of the month to say, hey, it's that time of the month again. And then we all put the money into her account.
Okay.
And then she distributes the money. She keeps the calendar of who's getting what, and she's the admin.
So, so how come you got the calendar wrong? Because you thought your month was only September, and
I
turns out.
because the calendar gets distributed in January. So you've got to
And you
kind
just
of make your note about. I just forgot about it. I really did think it was September. I just kind of remember thinking, oh, I wish I'd asked for my birthday month, and then I forgot about it. And then you just,
You know,
so
it
that's
doesn't matter
the first.
if it's a big amount of money or a small one. But I spoke on the show the other day about finding 100 rand in a book. I was going through some stuff here and tidying up and everything. I found 100 rand note in the book. I was like so excited about that. It's amazing how when you like put on an old jacket and you find like 50 rand in the pocket or something, you always think, bonus! I've hit the jackpot. This is the best news ever. And then you you kind of realize afterwards how silly that is. But we do love like an unexpected win, and I suppose that's what's nice about this month for you, because you didn't expect that money, and then it boom is in your account
Hmm.
suddenly.
It was.
It's
It
nice.
is. It is very nice. Very nice. But I see Bongi in the comments talking about Esona. Take Esona to Portugal. Did you see that story?
So is Isona, that's Black Coffee's son, right?
No. So this 10-year-old biathlete,
Oh,
swimming and something else, I don't know. And she is been kind of qualified for a whole tournament to go and represent South Africa in this thing in Portugal, wara 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 wara.
okay.
And the family and a couple of people are trying to raise. She needs 190,000 rand for the trip
Oh,
for
wow.
herself and her mother and her coach to get there, to get to the tournament, to participate, and all of that stuff. And it's like I love it. It's great that people want to contribute and make this, but I'm also so angry
Why?
that we have a so there's a sports body for this, isn't it? There is a,
No,
and this
Sascock.
person is not, she's not going in her personal capacity because she wants to. She is going to represent the country.
Right.
Why
Sascock.
is
That's
it
who should
not
be
part
paying.
of a why is it not part of a budget somewhere? What's like,
Oh,
I
well,
think
come on.
instead of hashtagging take Esona to Portugal, we should all be bombarding bloody Natim Tetwa to take Esona to Portugal. It's only
Oh,
200,000 rand.
will he respond? That's the problem. I mean, will
Yeah,
he
but we
respond? And will
should.
he respond? Our campaign to get him to stop his stupid 100-meter tall flag, that kind of put paid to his ideas there. So he responds to shame. Stockvels aren't shame, to go back to somebody's comment earlier, but you can shame a politician on social media. Now, Pumi, I know this is hugely controversial, and maybe we should save it for the burning platform. It came up with Lebang on Tuesday because it was something that Lindiwe Sisulu said. Just so that we know, because you always have kind of a sage opinion on these things. She suggested at the ANC conference that we should chemically castrate rapists, in the light of the story in Krugersdorp with the miners, the Zamazamas. What do you think of that?
I think it is just, it's Lindy Sisulu being, Lindy
Do you think
Sisulu trying
it's
to
ridiculous,
center
basically?
herself in the midst of. But I also think that, so like most things, the ANC, the problem is some of the ideas are so outlandish and crazy.
Hmm.
And but their biggest problem is implementation.
Yeah,
Implementation.
well, so
So
this is
before
basically
you can get to a place of
no, no.
even chemical.
Yeah, but what I'm asking then is you completely dismiss this as like political game playing, and you're not taking it seriously, and you think it's attention seeking on Lindiwe Sisulu's part.
It's always attention seeking on Lindiwe Sisulu's part. It is always attention seeking on Lindiwe Sisulu's part. I don't, and I think, so before
I'm,
you get to the
I'm going to
place
ask you
where
if you
you're
could just
chemically.
can you go out and come back in? Your mic is clipping again
Okay.
terribly. It's like we were getting every second word. So I don't know what's going on there. So I'll just carry on while you pop out and come back in. While Pums is out, let me quickly tell you about Naked. We've been talking to you about Naked Insurance for a little while now. They're offering, and their whole plan differs from other people's, but this is probably one of their best perks. I love it. Times are changing, right? Petrol's expensive. People are working from home more. People are using their cars in different ways than the ways that they used them pre-pandemic. So with Naked's cover pause, and I think this is such a clever idea, you can pause the accident portion of your cover on the days that you're not driving. Like, for example, yesterday I had all my meetings virtually, so I didn't have to go anywhere. So I could have pressed pause. I wouldn't have paid for any cover yesterday. Funny thing is, it works like down to the second. When you press go, it goes on. When you press pause, it goes off. So you're covered and then you're not covered. So, of course, it's a brilliant system, and it can save you up to 50% on your premium. It's just one click on the Naked app. There's no need to sit on the phone for 40 minutes just to tell us that your car is going to be parked. And while you're on cover pause, your stationary cover is still in place. So if you were worried, but what if someone, comes out of nowhere and tries to steal my car? Well, it's still covered for that. It's theft, fire, Mother Nature, even a runaway airport trolley, for example. So when you need to drive again, you can resume your cover with just one click on the Naked app again. So visit naked.insure. That's naked.insure. Or you can download the Naked Insurance app to sort out your insurance without a phone call. It's so easy. It's just a click. Naked Financial Technology is an authorized FSP. You can find out more at naked.insure. Here's Pumelele. Sorry, I don't know what happened there with your mic, but it's just clicking and clicking.
Okay, let's try again.
While we're on this story, I saw the news yesterday briefly, and I saw that they went and raided like one of these Zama settlements, if you can even call it that, on top of a mine dump. Basically, these people are living in, like, honestly, the most primitive kind of tents in the middle of winter. You can imagine the sort of life that these people have. No wonder they're reduced to thinking and behaving like animals. They're living like animals. I mean, it's absolute squalor. In the middle of like this dirty, dusty mine dump. There's no sanitation. There's no water. There's no electricity. They're working pretty much 24/7. They've got gas cylinders there, so they can run what is essentially like a primitive smelting and welding operation, so they can actually get the gold out of the soil that they try to dig out from these old mine dumps, and these abandoned mines, which they use as kind of tunnels and escape tunnels. Actually, when they heard the police were coming, they sent a drone, and these guys spotted the drone, and they disappeared into these tunnels, and they got away. And Becky,
remember Leto told us about this.
Yeah. Becky Taylor was there, and the Gauteng police commissioner was there. And I looked at this and thought, oh, there's so much wrong with this thing. And then Becky Taylor had some words to say about like how disgusting this rape was and everything else. And it seems that but somehow the outrage turned to Becky Taylor rather than to these obviously criminal people who've been arrested. 81 of them that were arrested. He apparently said something, and the DA climbed on board. They were like, oh, how could he say these outrageous things, insensitive things about, I'm not even clear on what he said, but what I heard was he said the one girl was raped by 8 guys, the one girl was raped by 6 guys, the other one by 3, by 2, by 1, or whatever. And he said the one girl, she was lucky, if you can call it lucky. At least. He said she was lucky, if you can call it that, because she got away with just being raped by 1. And, he's trying to make a point, though, about how disgusting the gang rapes are. He's not minimizing rape. But, of course, all the other politicians climbed into this. is this really something worth getting offended about? We all know what he meant. We know that he didn't mean to be like insensitive about rape. Or am I missing something here? Is that what he said that upset people?
I think it's a combination of factors. I think we're all upset. First of all, we're all upset by the fact that Begitele has, centered himself in all of this. So he's suddenly everywhere, showing up at every second crime scene, and is a spokesperson for all of
Yeah.
these various things. And we were talking about this at the office, wondering what does this mean? Does this mean that Begitele doesn't have a schedule? He doesn't have meetings. He doesn't have what is he doing? Supposed to be doing in the time that he's like dropping everything to fly through to a scene of whatever? Does it mean what's happened to everything else that he should have been doing? What's his everyday job? But
Right.
but it's also, this issue of illegal mining is not new. It's been going on for years and years and years. And it's been talked about by so many people over the years, and nothing has been done. And now all of a sudden, this is the thing about kind of election years, is you get quite a lot of activity in an election year. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody is showing up. Everybody is, and so yesterday what we also saw, because there was at the Krugersdorp Magistrates Court, they had various political parties kind of picketing outside as some of the accused were appearing in court yesterday morning. And one of the people, and the Twitter feed, I think she was being interviewed by someone from Newsroom, was Nomvula Mukonyane. When was the last time we saw her? All dressed up with the duku and a blanket, looking like a concerned mother, but picketing. And I was just like, why is the ANC out here picketing? Y'all are in government. Picketing is for other people who don't have the power to do something about these things.
Yeah.
And then she was asked, and the soundbite that's been making the rounds is the most garbled piece of garbage you have ever heard in your life. And I'm thinking,
from
woman,
Nomvula?
From Nomvula. Okay. She talks about everything. She talks about expropriation without compensation. She talks about civil society being involved. Everything. And this is what I mean by the outrage, I think, is about everything. It's the frustration about how all of these politicians have centered themselves without really wanting to do anything and not having done anything for so long. But because they are in need of the publicity,
right,
now you see them everywhere. And I think that's what the outrage is about.
They talk nonsense, hoping that one of the things that they mention will strike a chord with voters.
Yeah, just machine gunning, all the issues.
Spray and pray. Yeah, they're like, we talk about all the things that'll get me attention. Unbelievable. Isn't Nomvula Mokonyane still a cabinet minister?
Who knows?
Who knows,
is
right?
She? Who knows?
That's the point. I don't think anyone. There was a time where I knew, during the Mandela and Thabo Mbeki administration, even maybe the first year or two of the Zuma administration, I knew who all the cabinet ministers were. I knew because I was watching the news. I knew because I had to know. I remember I paid attention, and usually these people were seen. They were doing things, not always right. A lot of them were pretty useless, but I saw them on TV. If there was a transport issue, you saw the transport minister. There's a health issue, you saw the health minister. There would be a lot of finance minister stuff, especially around budget time. So you knew who was in charge of what departments, and you could kind of thumbsuck what the rating would be. Have you noticed they stopped doing those report cards?
Scorecards.
You remember they used to do those? They've just stopped because they realize nobody even knows who these ministers are anymore. So there's no point in doing it. It's unreal.
Suga. No, it's
all
terrible.
right. So Suga is probably the best thing you can say. So let me get to some headlines for us for this morning. The Batgirl movie has been scrapped before it even has been put out there. They've decided to scrap Batgirl. So Warner Brothers made the decision, reportedly budgeted at more than $70 million. It was due to be shown in cinemas and on the streaming service of HBO Max later this year. The New York Post reported that the decision had followed a poor reaction to test screenings. You don't say. However, Warner Brothers has said that the move reflected its leadership's strategic shift. Finally, Hollywood is starting to realize that you can't wokeify everything because you're just not going to get enough people into the cinemas to care about it and watch and actually pay attention. So the production was filmed entirely in Scotland. The local council said it had brought a significant economic benefit to the city. The film was based on the DC Comics character Barbara Gordon, or Batgirl. She appeared alongside Michael Keaton as Batman, Brendan Fraser as Firefly, and J.K. Simmons as Commissioner James Gordon. So Warner Brothers confirmed that Scooby Holiday Haunt would be scrapped as well. The spokesperson for the film said, "The decision not to release Batgirl reflects our leadership's strategic shift." I love that. When they start using words like strategic shift, you know that they've been caught with their pants down, right? Leslie Grace is an incredible, talented actor, and this decision is not a reflection of her performance. We're incredibly grateful to the filmmakers. This unusual move follows a change in leadership after Warner Brothers merged with Discovery in May 2021. Would you go and see this movie?
No. Although I hope when they say strategic shift that Warner Brothers, because they have a strategic alliance with DC Comics, right? Which is why they were making Batgirl. I hope they can see that that kind of Marvel has peaked, and this is their opportunity. I think Marvel has peaked, and this is their opportunity to get in there if they are going to do it.
I hope you're right that they've peaked and that they'll start to decline now, because I'm so up to here with superhero movies now. I mean, one of these things. I said it the other day, and I'm someone who, listen, I like being entertained. I like stupid stuff that doesn't force me to think too much when I go to the movies. But my God, all we've seen for the last 10 to 12 years is Marvel movies, one after the other after the other. They are all stupid. They all are the same story. And I don't think that it's appropriate anymore for adults to be watching them. Fine if kids are watching them. I understand that. But if you're an adult, if you're in your 30s, your 40s or 50s, God damn you, then you really need help, because it's not appropriate. It's not on for an adult to be watching these movies and to be addicted to them and to be enjoying them at the level that I see some people. It's just not on. If you're in your teens or your 20s, that's still okay. After that, it's just embarrassing. I'm sorry. Isn't Catwoman the female version of Batman? No need for a Batgirl. Well, no, Catwoman was famously played by Michelle Pfeiffer in the Batman where Arnold Schwarzenegger was Mr. Freeze. Do you remember that? And
yes.
Wasn't Danny DeVito the Penguin in that one as well?
Danny DeVito was the Penguin. Can't believe I'm having a second conversation about Danny DeVito this week. Yeah. What does this mean? Is the man making a comeback?
Maybe we're going to talk Danny DeVito again. Who knows? DC makes amazing movies, but they have shitty superheroes, says Dogozo. Marvel is starting to feel like the Fast and Furious movie series. Exactly. And after Fast and Furious 1, I'd seen enough. I mean, how much more of that can you... Unless you're an idiot who, you know... I'm not going to say it. You understand where I'm probably likely to... All right. In KZN, a tavern owner was arrested in possession of police uniform and drugs. So they're obviously deciding to hit these taverns quite hard after all these hideous incidents that we've seen over the last while. This 37-year-old tavern owner been arrested for being in illegal possession of firearms, ammunition, and a police uniform. According to KZN's police spokesperson, Lieutenant Colonel Nobile Gwala, the police received information that a tavern owner was in illegal possession of a firearm. They responded and proceeded to the tavern, which is located at his residence in Ulundi, where a search was conducted at the house. During the search, they found a pistol, 14 rounds of ammunition, a police uniform, various knives, and a bag containing daga. So that's what they call drugs these days. Gwala said police then proceeded to the tavern where a further search was conducted and alcohol to the value of 70,000 rand was seized. Now, 70,000 rands of alcohol Probably isn't that much alcohol for a tavern.
No.
Am I wrong?
No.
Not that much.
I suppose it depends on what kind of alcohol. If it's like 70,000 rands worth of beer, that's probably a lot.
That's quite a lot.
But spirits, I don't know.
If they raided your house, what do you think they'd find that they'd think was suspicious? I mean, they found these knives, but they could just be this guy's kitchen knives, right? When you want to find a reason, to arrest someone, you find a reason. And I wonder if they would find anything in your house or mine, Phumi, that they'd say, yeah, we found this in this evil Phumi Mashiko or Gareth Cliff's house. Don't know.
Who knows? I don't know.
Maybe they'd arrest us for... Do you think they'd arrest me for my sword collection? Probably, if they thought I was a violent person. They would, right? Well, they'd first have to get... How
many swords do you have?
They'd have to get to me. That's what they'd have to do. Okay, so Tracy said... I don't know. I've got a few. Tracy says, speaking of Danny DeVito and penguins, Benedict Cumberbatch can't pronounce the word penguin. He narrated a BBC wildlife show. He pronounced it penwings, penguinks. He won't go near the word now. We won't go there. Wow, what's the show that he narrates? I mean, surely someone would have, because if you narrate a show, you sit in a booth and then they go through it with you, they record it with you. There's usually someone who, it's so frustrating to these voiceovers. Everybody thinks that voiceovers, it's an income stream for those of us who think we've got a nice voice. It's horrible. You sit there and then this person tells you said that wrong 20 times and you have to keep saying it and keep saying it to their satisfaction. So I'm sure someone would have corrected him.
Shame. And maybe he couldn't get it right. I watched a documentary yesterday.
Well, in retaliation, we can't ever get his surname right. So maybe that's fair. Cumberbatch. Right.
And I just, on YouTube, about like a famous gangster, someone who was like in the Gambino family and whatever. Anyway, and he's been in prison for 20 years. And now he's got I'm going to remember what his name is, but he can't pronounce the word dyslexia. And he kept saying dyslexic, something without the S even. And he couldn't pronounce the word and he kept saying the word because he just kind of looking back at his life, at which point he thinks it all kind of went south for him.
Yeah.
Because he's been he's been in the mafia all his life. And that was his thing. It was like if somebody back then had known to identify that's, he's got that issue at school and worked with him, he thinks he could have done something else with his life.
Your mic's doing that thing again. Let me quickly tell you this. Assets worth 13 million rand belonging to Richard Mdluli and his co-accused have been frozen. Now, we say that the wheels of justice turn slowly, but the National Prosecuting Authority's Asset Forfeiture Unit has successfully frozen assets to the value of 13 million rand belonging to former crime intelligence boss Richard Mdluli and his co-accused in the slush fund corruption case. This was years ago. The restraint order, which was granted by the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria in June, was served on Mdluli, the former crime intelligence supply chain manager Heiner Barnard, and the former chief financial officer Solomon Lazarus on Tuesday. Mdluli's former and current wives and Lazarus and Barnard's wives are also cited as respondents in the application. The effect of the order is that their assets will be administered by a curator and they won't be able to sell or dispose of the assets. Investigating Directorate spokesperson Sindisiwe Siboka said that the restraint of the assets was premised on what has become known as the slush fund case. So Richard Mdluli is back in the news. It's amazing. This guy, he's been at large. I mean, he's been carrying on with his life. He's been living his life despite being basically accused of some of the most heinous crimes that any human being has. He's conspiracy to murder. You remember, he was the crime intelligence boss who actually had a policeman's wife killed, supposedly, allegedly. And he was just untouchable for a very long time, Richard Mdluli. Remember that?
And listening into people's phone conversations.
Now your mic is Now we can hardly hear you.
Too low. Is it gone too low now? I've been trying to.
No, it's like there's this clicking sound. It's very weird. I don't know what's going on there. We've got to look at this before next week's show.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you a technician during the course of the week. We've got to figure this out. Something's wrong. I'll ask Homolemo to go and have a look at it, or Greg.
So
see what we can do.
I'm gonna, yeah, and also I'm getting
like every time you say anything, it click 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 click. So it's as soon as the sound kind of hits the microphone, there's something wrong. Might even be the mic.
Let me see if I can. I'm gonna use the internal mic.
There we go. Now,
give me a second.
Now it's gone. It's gone. Okay. Stick to that. Whatever's happening now is fine.
Okay. I've just turned it
now
on
it's cool.
Okay. Let's see.
Suddenly now it's all fine. Yeah. So Richard Mdluli, you remember him? So they finally managed to seize his assets and basically hold him accountable for something. You see, again, if we take away the ill-gotten gains of these crooks, then we're doing something. Please, the National Prosecuting Authority, do more of this. You want us to praise you? We're not asking for a lot. Just do some of this. That's all.
I want more than taking away of assets. I think the assets must be taken away, but they must also do time.
No, I'm inclined to agree. All right. Amazingly, we are doing very well at the World Junior Champs. So South Africa won gold and bronze for our team there. After winning the World Junior title in Nairobi last year, Minna de Klerk retained her title, and as she won gold again in the women's shot put, she produced a throw of 17.17 meters in the final. Benjamin Richardson was beaten by Botswana's Letsile Tebogo, who broke the junior world record in an electrifying 9.91 seconds, while Boachi Nkrumah of Jamaica grabbed silver. So that's interesting. We're doing okay. South Africa claimed its first medals at the World Athletics Under-20 Championships in Cali in Colombia, as these people managed to bring home these medals, which is great news. I mean, if people are going to get excited about, Banyana, then we can get excited about the junior champs. So I think that's fair enough. And well done to these athletes.
We should get excited about all of it.
Well, it's just difficult to retain a level of excitement when it's really not the main event. That's the only thing I'm saying. It would be nice if one of our actual national teams that actually has more than 5 viewers and 5 supporters won something. That would be great. Okay.
We'll see on Saturday. We'll see on Saturday.
What's happening on Saturday? Rugby.
It's rugby.
I know you say that like I'm supposed to know, Phumi, but I don't know anything about rugby. I don't watch. I'm not even a supporter of those teams. Here's an interesting story. The UK McDonald's in the UK has banned under 18s after 5 p.m. without parents as staff have been subjected to verbal and physical abuse. They've got a major problem in London, for example, with chavs. These young kids who are unsupervised, they've been raised badly by parents who are very often drug-addled or just don't give a damn. And McDonald's in the UK has decided, especially in the city of Liverpool, that no under 18s can eat there after 5 o'clock in the afternoon without an adult to supervise them. A spokesperson said that the staff had been subjected to verbal and physical abuse from kids under the age of 18. We have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to crime and antisocial behavior, they added. When a business has to shut its doors to a huge swathe of the market because the market can't behave itself.
Its core target market.
Who's to blame for that? What do we do about this? I mean, it's not our problem, it's Britain's problem. But what do we do about this? What do we do when under 18s are verbally and physically abusing the staff at a takeaway place? I mean, ridiculous. It's really bad. This is, if I were a Brit right now, and we've got our problems in South Africa, so I'm not casting aspersions. I know that our glass house is also susceptible to stones being thrown. But when kids are behaving like this, you've got a social problem. There's something really, really bad going on. And I wonder what the cause of it is. There's a lot of of talk about these welfare mums who, similar to a lot of the arguments we have in South Africa about these people who just get grants for having children. So they have kids with men who are never around. The absence of the father figure is a major problem here in South Africa as well as in Britain. You've also got violence. You've got a lot of these kids growing up in gangs. You've got a lot of them who don't have any parental supervision because the parent or parents work the whole time. They're raised by the television. So there are a whole lot of questions here that now it's McDonald's problem. So they have to close to under 18s at 5 p.m. Because as soon as the sun goes down, these little vampires and werewolves become impossible to manage.
So I hadn't heard this term chav before. And
Mm.
when I Googled it, I'm still horrified at,
So
at the definition thereof.
give us the definition that you found.
It's hectic. It's
Go on.
hectic. Scally or roadman is another word for it, is a British pejorative term used to describe antisocial lower class youth.
Mm-hmm. That's
Lower
it.
class
Chavs.
youth.
Yep.
Thieving, pot smoking, gaudy jewelry wearing, white city kid with no ambition.
There we go.
You.
Yeah. Chavs. So are we not allowed to refer to people like that anymore? Because that's what they are.
You.
What do we
Fake
say?
Burberry is
Yeah.
another
Fake
thing.
Burberries. That's the. So I've got a book about chavs that someone bought for me. I think they bought it as a joke and gave it to me as a present one year. But it's basically, and I read 2 or 3 chapters of it. It's interesting because it gets into why there is this social underclass in the youth in Britain and where they come from and a lot of these things that I've just described. Now, maybe I should go and haul it off the library shelf and reread
You
it.
might have to, and just share the title. I'd love to read that.
It's called Chavs. Chavs.
It's called Chavs. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to look
I'll
for it.
find
I'd love to read it.
Well, I'll bring it to the studio for you.
Cool.
You're welcome to read it. I somehow think you might have quite useful and valuable insights into the chavs, but this is a real problem in Britain.
But
They've also got spiraling knife crime, and most of the people who are committing that knife crime are under the age of 18. They're old grannies who are like they're busy taking their groceries in from the car to their council flat. And these kids of like 15, 16 will come up and like threaten her with knives and say, "Give us your bags, old lady. We're going to take your groceries this morning. Thank you for doing your shopping for us." And then they'll go. And it seems that there's just nothing they can do. How's that?
That's hectic. And
So we have
and
problems
the fact
there.
that it's just anarchy, right? So
Yeah.
it's for no other reason other than just complete chaos, causing chaos.
Right.
Oh, that's what it sounds
Well,
like. I mean, this McDonald's situation, right? Is it simply
yeah.
causing chaos? They're not like robbing the McDonald's. They're just abusing the staff. They're just abusing
Yeah.
people
They
who are
just
trying
they
to
have
earn an
no
honest
they have no
living.
manners. They're just the underclass. That's what they are. Beth's Eleutheria says, that's almost like Benedict Cumberbatch. This is what happens when you outsource responsibility for your life to the state. You get irresponsible adults raising worse future adults. And I think that's a good point. I think that's a very good point. The government post World War II that promised British people they would look after their healthcare, their education, they would take care of their, job security. They'd make sure that they also had money if they didn't have a job. All of this stuff results in a bunch of potatoes who sit at home watching TV, drinking, taking drugs, having children, and not looking after those children. And then the cycle perpetuates itself. So that's Britain reaping the whirlwind of some very, very ugly seeds they sowed in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And really, this is what they are.
This is totally one of the things that when I'm awake at 2 a.m, kind of flirts through my mind is our country and our young people, where we have
Yeah.
so many young people who are uninspired, hopeless, and
Raising themselves.
undereducated, raising themselves, and it's just it is the seeds of chaos.
Well, we mustn't feel like we're alone. And by no means is this Schadenfreude. I'm not saying that, oh, because Britain's got problems, that means our problems are somehow okay. We clearly have as many, if not more, issues. And it's good to notice that this is going on all over the world, because then it means you're paying attention. You're not sitting here going, oh my God, South Africa is the worst place ever. I mean, Gord Laws, who we often have on the show, he was in Liverpool. I think the last time we spoke to him, it could even been, the second last time we spoke to him. He was saying it's just the most horrible city. Like, Liverpool is just awful. The quality of people is very poor. They shout at each other the whole time. There's a huge amount of like verbal and physical abuse evident in society the whole time. He spoke about the knife crime as well, which is a major thing. So they don't have gun crime in Britain because it's very, very
Knife
hard to obtain
crime.
a gun. But knife crime, yeah, it's a big thing.
Jeez.
And it's kids, Pumi. It's not adults. It's like teenagers. And, for ordinary people who are just going about their daily business, this is the thing they fear the most, is these knife-wielding teenagers. And it's a really big problem in parts of London, Liverpool, Birmingham, pretty much anywhere where someone talks like this. That's where you'll find a problem. Anyway, some were robbing. They challenge each other to do a Mac dive, which is diving over the counter and stealing as many burgers as possible. Oh, wow, says Brian. He's busy explaining to us what actually happens and why they've decided to close these places. A Mac dive. You dive over the counter and you steal burgers. That's why they've decided no kids after 5:00. Sure,
Jeez.
Brian. Hectic. Ethan says knife crime is so old school, it's a prisoner's weapon.
It's an easy weapon to have and get
Well,
and chisel and make.
Well, believe it or not, the stupid British are trying to, I say the stupid, the politicians are trying to ban knives in certain areas. They will allow you to have like blunt knives, but not sharp ones, because they're trying to, again, these are the same people who think guns are the problem instead of humans are the problem. They blame the tool. So they're like, oh, well,
Knives.
in places like Birmingham, what we'll do is we'll just stop selling sharp knives. All the knives are going to have a blunt edge. So you can cut like this, but you can't stab. As if cutting like this isn't an option for someone who's violent and inclined to that sort of thing. It's so dumb, right?
Oh, and I hate those things, like those types of knives, like they have in the plane now. It's one of the reasons why I'm like working so hard to get into the first class or business class at least, because they have proper
Yeah.
knives.
Yes, exactly. Because no one in first class is going to stab anyone, of course. Does anyone remember, says Dr. Robin, that BBC parenting show called Super Nanny? The world's worst parent,
Yes.
The House of the Tiny Tearaways, all of them trying to get parents to parent. I remember those shows. And that should have
I
been our
remember
canary in
those
the coal mine. I mean, that was where it all was becoming a major social problem already for the people who were paying attention. So now it's seriously got worse. Just plain Jared says, I was in Australia in 2009. I went to McDonald's and there was a very tense vibe.
No.
There was an actual bouncer in case a fight broke out in McDonald's.
In 2009.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know about that. I could picture Jamie Oliver's outrage at the new laws, but I can't make out what he's saying. Corona's pouring.
Stop it, guys. It's a problem.
Yeah, that's awful. That's a real
Imagine.
problem. Well, that is the UK's problem, not ours. We've got the Burning Platform coming up next, which I'm very excited about. We will check in on all the big stories in the news. We're going to have Dumo Denga, who I'm very grateful has managed to make time for us this morning. We went through like 5 guests who Dori and Simpi were trying to nail down for today's Burning Platform. All of them had, I have to drop the kids. I have an emergency. I don't have petrol in my car. I'm worried about load shedding. All 5 of them let us down. So thank God Dumo, who is irrepressible and can always be relied upon, will be our guest after 7.
I thought about this too this morning when I was not sleeping, about the number of people who now have to drop their kids off at school. Like, whatever happened to school buses?
Oh, you can't rely on those. Come on. We can't trust those people. But yeah, so Dumo Denga will be joining us on the Burning Platform.
Transport yabantwana.
We want to talk about all the things that matter to you, even transport of your children to and from school. But let us know what is on your mind this morning so we can get into some of the big events and the big affairs, the big stories of the moment. And you can do that by dropping
news in yesterday's by-elections.
Well, we want to hear about that too. We want to hear about all of it in the Burning Platform, which is next. Stick around. cliffcentral.com on a Thursday morning.
This week on the Auto Trader Podcast, because at least with the private sale, or the private buy, should I say, let's not say private sale, the private buy, you get to drive the car. You might, the private seller might let you take the car to a place that does a condition report like we spoke about last week. The private seller might give you more information about the car, give you its access to its service history via the OEM, and more information than you could ever get. So that's why I say the private buy is a better buy than the auction. Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
All right, we are back, and it is time for the Burning Platform. It's a Thursday morning. Phumi Mashiko, as always, and we're ready to tolerate, tackle, take down, terrify, and translate all the things.
We're not tolerating nonsense, though.
We're not. No, okay, so zero toleration, but everything else we're still going for. And we're joined this morning by Dumo Denga, who is, of course, a Libertarian, also co-host and founder of the ManPatria Podcast. Dumo, it's always good to see you. How are you doing, and what's been going on in your life? Give us a quick update.
I am great, Gareth. A lot of things have been happening at ManPatria. We have taken a break, and we've just done some changes in the background. So you'll find that all of our content, I think, it's not on YouTube anymore, unfortunately, but it's on our website. So don't worry. And it's all free, no ads, nothing like that.
Were you taken off of YouTube, or did you take yourself off of YouTube?
I took myself off of YouTube.
Oh, is there a reason for that? Do you want to tell us a little bit?
Reason why I did that, I just felt that given the validation markers that exist on social media, I don't think it's best for the ManPatria Podcast to be on YouTube. I just feel that people will better judge our content by being on a space where there aren't any validation markers that could actually potentially harm our perception. So that's the reason why.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it was a preemptive move by you because you think that eventually they'll become more and more censorious. Is that kind of what you're thinking is?
Yes, along those lines as well, yes.
All right, well, listen, I certainly hope that doesn't happen because we want our show to carry on being on YouTube. But we love having you on because you have an interesting insight into so many things and you don't mind a take that isn't the mainstream popular take on many things. So, Phumi and Dumo, where do we begin with a week where, I mean, it seems to me the ANC policy conference was on everyone's mind for about 5 seconds and then disappeared. Cyril apparently ran the conference with an iron fist. Gwede Mantashe was what they called his bouncer at the conference. They extracted and excluded everyone who had, let's say, contrary opinions. Everyone who was from the so-named RET faction, anyone who was from KZN and did not approve of certain things that are going on in the ANC because they probably approve of different leaders. What does all of this mean? I mean, the ANC we know is in free fall. We know they're in decline. We know they're likely to be given a hiding in pretty much all the elections they're taking part in. But it seems that they are living in, I think it was Professor Susan Boyson who said, and she's quite a good analyst. I've asked Dory to get her on the show as well. They're living in a world of their own imagination, the ANC. They aren't actually connected to reality. Do you think that's fair? Dumo, you go first.
Yes, you go first.
Yeah, I tend to lean towards that. I think that they are living in their own world. If you look at the things that were mentioned in the conference, like, for example, they were talking about increasing or introducing a wealth tax that's going to fund this 350 Rand grant. And then also at the same time, they talked about having a state-owned bank. And they also proposed that the Reserve Bank has to be nationalized and its mandate in the Constitution has to be changed to include tackling unemployment. And the reality is that if anyone can just look at how to tackle unemployment and how to reduce poverty and so forth, you don't need to take such drastic measures. But I just think what's happening now is that they're trying to increase the power of the state, so much so that if the times do get bad, they still got some resources that they can use to sustain themselves. So that's what's happening, and they are out of touch with reality because, I mean, if you look at South Africa's unemployment rate, I think it's at its highest ever. We just gone out of a situation in the pandemic where millions of jobs have been lost and so forth, and also we're back to load shedding. You know, it's stage 4 today from 4 o'clock. So you really and they're not doing anything about it.
But Dumo, someone said to me yesterday, and I don't think it was a very good argument, but they said that this is really, this load shedding thing, they believe is completely political. They say it's not an electricity supply problem, which I don't agree with. But let me put their theory to you, and you tell me if you think it's nonsense as well. The point being made by this person was that the ANC are just basically showing the people of this country that they actually have, in very literal terms, power. That they can switch off your power, that they can turn it on, that they can mess you around, they can play with your life, and that they hold the reins in their hands. Now, there are people who say that there is a certain amount of nefarious nonsense going on around Eskom. It's not just blatant incompetence. I don't believe that. I think, you cannot attribute evil and insidiousness and wickedness to things that are just plainly incompetence. But this Eskom thing, again, why is it suddenly a problem now? Why wasn't it a problem for a little while? It's almost like it's a bit of, it's abusive. It's like he hits you, then he says sorry, promises he won't hit you again, and then just when you're starting to get comfortable with him again, he hits you again. It's that abusive husband syndrome that I think we're in with the ANC. Do you think there's anything more going on here than just plain incompetence? Do you believe any of this conspiracy nonsense that it's actually political and they're busy showing people that they're in charge and they can do what they want with you, and that message would actually have effect on certain quarters in South Africa?
I think, look, I mean, with regards to conspiracy theories, I mean, they can be true, and they're nice to hear. I mean, it's really interesting stuff to hear about. But I don't think the ANC is trying to show that they have power, because they would have done something like this prior to 2007, when load shedding actually did become a reality. I do think that Eskom, Eskom or the government, whoever, are being incompetent. I mean, if you look at the stats of Eskom's electricity generation, their electricity generation peaked in 2007 and then has decreased by 15% ever since. And what is also interesting is that since that time, their average electricity price per kilowatt has increased by over 400% as well. So you have this decrease in electricity generation and the increase in the price as well, which is like a total rip-off in my opinion. So maybe the conspiracy theory is true in the sense that they'll say that, well, they're increasing the price of electricity to show that we can increase the price and no one can say anything about it, including NERSA. Maybe that part of it is true, but in terms of electricity generation and them switching it off, I don't think so.
Pumps?
Look, I think it's a combination of factors. And
Your mic is a bit soft for me.
Is it soft again? Okay.
Yeah,
so I think it's a combination of factors. The first one being general incompetence. The second one, though, being years and years of mismanagement and lack of proper skill. But I do think that the conspiracy theorists have something that they are onto. And the indicator for that is the lack of consistency of the powerlessness that we have, right? So if what the problem is energy generation or demand, not being able to meet the demand and all of that, then there has to be some certain level of consistency, because what has happened in the past 10 days to the demand that made it possible for us to have consistent power, and then what is the change that, so
absolutely,
that suddenly we don't have enough power to meet the demand. If it is sabotage in the in the power stations, if it is sabotage in the power stations, then that is, you know what I'm saying? That's why I'm saying it's a combination of factors. But I do buy into the some of the conspiracies. But I don't think that the conspiracy is that the ANC is trying to show us how much power they actually have over us, because I don't think they even know how much power they have over us at this point. Their level of incompetency, guys, trust me, we cannot
things that
attribute
to anything nefarious. It's just incompetence. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, it's complete incompetence. Okay, so two things that came out of what Dumo said. First one, and either of you can comment on these however you'd like. The first one is the situation with the wealth tax, the idea that there are still people who they can milk, that if they can just milk those people some more, they'll be able to delay their own collapse by giving some of that money, by transferring wealth from some rich people who I'm not sure who they think is rich, but apparently in this country, at the moment, anyone who's earning over 50,000 Rand a month is considered rich. Which would be middle class in any other country in the world. But that's besides the point. The wealth tax, feasible or not feasible, we got to talk about that. It's just another desperate attempt by the ANC to make themselves relevant to the poor, who they still believe are their constituency, even though the poor have stopped voting in any conceivable, measurable way. The other one is this idea of Eskom. I was thinking about something. We've often spoken on the show about how people need to get off the grid. They need to find ways of empowering themselves, making sure that they're protected during these outages and all the rest of it. The reality is, for so many people, they don't own their own property. I mean, most people in this country do not own any property at all. So you can't go around buying solar. Where are you going to put it? You can't rent a property and put solar in. You can't You can't go and put in solar geysers, for example, if you're the person who's hiring a place instead of the person who owns it. For many people, the best they can do is like a little UPS, which is kind of what I use to keep the show going in the mornings when there's load shedding. We don't think about those people at all, let alone those who can't afford any of that stuff, because it is damned expensive getting yourself off the grid. So those two things, the wealth tax and then the other wealth tax of having to protect yourself against Eskom.
Right. I'll start with the wealth tax.
Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, with regards to the wealth tax, I think it's exactly what you say, Gareth. It's just another way for the government to extract money from people that are productive and giving it to people that are quote unquote unproductive. Not to say that they are, but let's just say the poor, for example. And I think. So I think in the long run, this is just a delaying of the inevitable. I think that at some point there won't be anything to take away from the so-called rich, the quote-unquote rich. Because the rich people, or the extremely wealthy people, if you want to put it that way, they got the means to escape. Remember, Mauritius is not too far away. It's a 4-hour flight. They also have tax incentives. They'll say, come invest in our country and we'll give you some tax breaks. So those people, they have their span of view is quite wide. So they can actually go pretty much wherever they want and take their money and put it somewhere else. And the government understands this, and this is why they have these really strict laws on immigration with regards to your savings and stuff like that. So I think ultimately the stance that the government takes and this wealth tax is just going to make things even worse. And people may not even invest in South Africa as a result, and it's just going to collapse a lot of things. So I think the wealth tax is a terrible idea. There are better ways to take the poor out of poverty. Free markets, they work. I've explained that extensively on many occasions. And then let's go to the thing about the solar panels. Yes, solar panels are expensive. My dad, he got a quote for one, and I saw it and I was like, this is crazy. I couldn't believe how expensive it was. So going off the grid is very expensive. Now, there is a better solution. The reality is that with Eskom, they can't keep up with the supply. They can't keep up with increasing the supply of electricity. The reality is that, and I'm writing an article on this, but basically the argument that I'm going to make is that, look, the electricity market has to be deregulated up to the point where private players can actually generate, distribute, and sell electricity to whoever they want. And they can compete with Eskom on a large scale or on a small scale. Because the reality is that even like today, I mean, if you go and buy like a sandwich, for example, like a club sandwich, it's got bacon, it's got chicken, depending on what you prefer. There's a lot of things in that sandwich. Now, if you had to create that sandwich yourself, you have to pay a lot of money to get all those raw materials and stuff like that. It's very expensive, not feasible, but someone can actually put it together to you and sell it. And I think there are people that can do the same thing with electricity. Let's rather go down that route, and you will see electricity will become much more affordable, and it will be more reliable as well.
What do you say, Pums? Do you think that a wealth tax, and by the way, it's not just a wealth tax, but the ANC also tabled this idea of scrapping TV licenses and rather just imposing an additional tax on the household. They call it a household tax. And that would be another way for them to get their dirty, filthy fingers on our hard-earned money.
I promise you guys, the best thing for all of us in this country, with all of their policies and all of their ideas, is that the ANC is actually very bad at implementation. They're very bad at implementation. So they and I mean, I saw some pieces of some of the kind of discussion documents that they were circulating, and none of them have any concrete plans. You know, they're all just pie in the sky kind of ideas. I think everybody had their back up because Cyril is still a favorite. When Thabo Mbeki said there's no plan in place, everybody was like, "Oh, Thabo Mbeki, how dare you?" And, you know,
Yes, I
the
know.
truth of the matter is, what are Cyril's plans? What is Cyril? And he's never like come out and said, I plan to do 1, 2, 3, other than
No.
this idea of fighting corruption and rooting it out, which is, that can take forever. What does it look like when he's finished fighting the corruption? What does that look like?
And
Is
what
he
a
fighting corruption
what
right
a
now?
but what a low level goal as well, right? I mean, if that's all you got, if that's the best you can do, is like, we will fight corruption, that should be your entry level thing, shouldn't it? And that should be every government's. It shouldn't have to be the thing that is your entire
The
policy
one thing
or
that's
your
your big
administration.
idea.
Right. It's outrageous. I mean, he's done nothing to grow the economy. It's shrunk under him and it's shrunk under Jacob Zuma. The two of them have done irreparable damage to the economy, but not just them, their entire cabinet and all the people in the ANC who do those NEC meetings and those what do they call the other ones? The bigger ones. The group, what do they call the executive authority in the ANC that they have every cabinet? The National Working Committee, and then there's the National Executive
The
Committee. One of
NEC,
those.
that's the executive.
I can
That's the
never remember.
NEC.
Anyway,
But you
all
know,
those people should go to jail for what they've done to this economy. All of them. There's
Rebecca Davis
not
wrote-
one improvement they've made.
Rebecca Davis wrote an incredible kind of opinion piece in the Daily Maverick last week, heading into the policy conference, just kind of looking through some of those documents and what's there and what's not there. And one of the things that stood out for me
Mhm.
when reading her piece is exactly how much old thinking there is in those documents. So they're just a rehashing of old ideas. Some of those ideas as old as kind of 1920. They're not anything desperately new. And what we need now in South Africa is we need radically different and new ideas. Taxation is not going to be the answer. Not wealth taxes, not more kind of household taxes. The reason why taxation is not going to be the idea, and I gave you the numbers last week, is because the earnings of people in South Africa have become less and less. In a country where you have this kind of unemployment, taxation is not going to work. Even if you look at kind of the power that COSATU has had in the past, the reason they don't have that kind of power today is because their numbers have declined. Why? Because less people are working. Therefore, there are not enough people in unions. And that's why we need different ideas. We need new thinking in the economics that says, how do we reorganize and reorchestrate our economy so that we can grow it? Saying people should go off the grid and less reliance on Eskom is a great idea if people had the money to do that. It's, on average, it's about 200,000 rands to go off the grid for a small household.
Great.
People live on less than 20 rand a day here in this country. So
How can we afford that? Yeah.
that's not going to be a solution.
So, all right. So now we discussed the stupidity of these proposals which they tabled. These are things that they took very seriously, by the way, at the conference. That SABC TV licenses should be scrapped for a household tax. That Lindiwe Sisulu thinks we should chemically castrate rapists, for example. It's like they're grasping, as Phumi said in the beginning of the show this morning, before we started the Burning Platform, Dumo, and you might have missed this, but she said, Nomvula Mokanyane came out at a picketing, a protest against these Zamazamas who've been arrested for these hideous and revolting rapes that took place. 81 of them arrested for raping, I think it was 8, maybe 10 girls. But really an outrageous story. So everyone in the country is completely and justifiably upset about this. What does Nomvula Mokonyane do? She starts like machine gunning, as Phumi said, all these slogans about expropriation without compensation, kill the rapists, shoot the criminals, GBV, Women's Month, blah, blah, blah. It's all nonsense. Nobody's listening to her, but she's hoping desperately one of the things she says will stick, right? Because we do have a situation here at the moment where people are so disenchanted with the system that they've just opted out. And we talk about elections all the time, and maybe this is a great place for us to bring up the by-elections that Phumi wanted to talk about this morning, because maybe they give us an indication of what's going on. So where were these by-elections, Phum? And maybe you can tell us what they are, and then Dumo and I can have some insights from
Hold
you.
up. Hold on. Let me
For me, by the way,
find
is like
these numbers while I find
an
the numbers
election.
for you.
She's an election nerd, so when Phumi can help it, she loves deep diving into these by-elections to see what's going on. I'm not even aware of when my local by-elections happen or when they don't. I think I'm just in time with the whole national schedule, but who knows?
Well, they are important for a couple of things, and my favorite person to follow around these things is Davy Skulls, because he's a number
Davy Skulls.
cruncher and he's a nerd like me with that. But also in the Sunday's paper, Peter Bruce had an interesting opinion piece, also talking about the numbers and the polling and the extrapolations. And one of the people whom we've had, I think, on the show before, that he spoke about, who used to be at the IRR, Franz Grunier, and the numbers and because that's what Franz Grunier does. He does polling of kind of
Yes.
listening in to what people.
I don't think he's
that's
with
what
the
he
IRR
still does.
anymore.
He's
really?
not with the IRR anymore,
Okay.
but he still does polling.
Okay.
Yeah. In my other life, I get to have interesting conversations with fabulous people about all these kinds of things. And so, interesting. So there were 4 by-elections, one in Tshwane, in Waterkloof.
Okay.
Gareth, so in your areas.
In my area, yeah. I did see posters. I went to a thing on Monday and I saw some posters and I thought it's not election time, but that now you've explained it to me. Thank you.
So, Tshwane, big winners yesterday. The DA, people will be here glad to hear this in the comment section over here. The DA, 78%, which is an increase of 8%. The FF, 19%, also an increase of 6%. Action SA wasn't there, so that does take away a little bit of, kind of looking at, and the by-elections and the numbers and how people are behaving there kind of give us an indication of what we can expect in 2024, barring an outside factor that we haven't seen. And I think I keep saying to you guys that there's going to be a seismic shift, and I keep thinking we're probably going to see news about those kinds of things towards the end of this year, closer to the ANC's election. But there's going to be some interesting players that come into the space, and that's going to be a huge disruption, I think. And then Modimolle, which is also Ward 12 in Modimolle, which is also a white area. And Carl will be devastated to hear this, that I say it's a white area and it's important. The DA won with 68%, but they lost ground. So even though they have retained that ward, they have lost. They've gone down by 4%. And the FF is at 30%, and they've gone up by 6%. And no EFF, no Action SA showing up there. Umfolozi in KZN, a black area. IFP, 68%.
Good. I like the way you're
IFP
calling these things as they are, Phumi, because that's what people think. I mean, we all think that, right? Black area, white area. This is how people think. We don't mince our words.
ANC has lost 1%, but they're still second with 25%, and the EFF have lost ground, gone down by 7% to 5%, right?
Okay.
And again, 2 things, right, that you see in these places. The ANC is not coming back. Like where they have lost ground, they are not coming back. I keep telling you that the EFF has plateaued.
Right?
The EFF have plateaued, and in some places they're losing ground. Look here, they've gone down by 7%, right? The DA also, in those places where they have maintained and lost ground, they've lost ground to the FF, and those voters are not coming back to them, right?
Yeah.
And again, these are interesting things to watch, because often I say this on the show and it gets misheard as me saying that there are no alternatives for many people. The alternatives are there, they exist, but people are not opting for them for whatever reason, right? And that is what the opposition parties should be looking at. The opposition parties should be looking at what is it they should be introspecting. What is it about them that makes the voter not come to them? And how do they seduce the voter to their side of the table? What is the information they need to be giving the voter? And what is it that they are not seeing about the voter, perhaps, that makes the voter not buy into them?
All right, so Dumo, what do you make of those numbers? I mean, where the DA loses, they lose to the Vryheidsfront Plus. Where the ANC loses, they lose to everybody. What do you make of the fact that it's very difficult for the ANC to come back after they've lost? They don't come back. What do you make of the EFF not growing or changing in most of these areas in any which way? In fact, decline is likely on the cards for them as well, no matter how much they ratchet up the rhetoric. What do you think is going on here? What do you think is happening in these by-elections and in these districts?
I think from what I can gather is that it looks like people are looking at the alternatives much more seriously. So it seems like previous DA voters are looking at the FF Plus, and if you look at, let's say, in Pelosi, for example, we saw there was a decrease or increase in the IFP votes as well.
11%
So it looks like the
increase.
11%. Look at that. That is incredible. That's a massive amount. And I think what's happening is that people are taking the alternatives a bit more seriously, which is good, which I think is a good thing, because I mean there has been this rhetoric that has been going around where they're like, well, there aren't any alternatives, but they are there. And if you look at the EFF, for example, they're plateauing. I think with the EFF, to be very critical of them, I think that people do get tired of seeing them, turning up the heat the whole time. People are just getting tired of it and bored of it, and they can really see that's probably all that they have to offer. So I think that now voters are becoming more informed, and they are looking at the alternatives much more seriously and placing the trust in these alternatives. But at the same time, these alternatives need to come to the party and they need to deliver, because we've seen instances where there've been coalitions formed and everything like that. Not to say that there were any coalitions formed given in these by-elections, but what has happened is that over time, when these coalitions form, they break. If you saw with COPE, for example, COPE did well in their first election, and then now they paled into insignificance. So these alternative parties need to take full advantage of this and build on this and grow, because just like the people that they've taken votes away from, they can also decrease as well. So it's good. I like to see this type of competition within politics, and I hope it can be the same can be reflected in the 2024 national elections.
So, Pums, I listened to you carefully just now. You said this seismic shift, and is that seismic shift just the decline of the ANC, which has been more like a very slow and incremental sort of drop?
No.
Or is there something else that you think is coming? Is there, and what kind of a thing is it?
There are going to be disruptions in this space. And I think that it'll be interesting to see what Mmusi Maimane puts together going forward. But also there are many alternatives that are cropping up. There are many people who have kind of gone, what we have in this space is not sufficient. It's not answering the questions that we have, and it's definitely not meeting the needs that we have. I think you would have seen in the past couple of weeks, Songezo Zibi, and I've asked Dory if she can try and get him on the show for us.
Yes,
and he's absolutely putting something together and moving, protects our democracy. Not Mcebisi, Jonas. I'll remember his name just now. I'm having the worst memory this morning. But there are various people putting together alternatives that they believe would answer some of the questions. And also, I suppose, throwing down a gauntlet to South Africans to say, you be part of the solution too. Don't just say, these guys aren't working, but also you be part of the solution. How do you stand up, put your hand up, and be part of what the solution that we need going forward?
Pablo wants to know whatever happened to Makosi Khoza. Well, you may ask Herman Mashaba that question. Listen, I do think. I mean, you mentioned Mmusi Maimane. I honestly haven't thought about him for a long, long time. But there are probably places that he will still have some influence, and maybe in some places he's even grown his influence. It seems that the parties are the ones who are most under threat here, and individuals whether it's independent candidates or whether it's smaller, newer parties who still have a bit of shine, may just have a good showing at the next election. We did see how well Action SA did last time around, and they will continue to do well, I'm sure, because they also make the right kind of noise. People just want something that works, right? They
It'll
just
be
want something that
interesting
works.
to see. It will absolutely be interesting to see if Herman Mashaba and his party can put in a national showing, and if the issues that they are putting on the table are issues that resonate for the rest of the country as much as they resonate in smaller areas in metropolitans. So what one of their very, very big things, and we've often had this conversation about Herman Mashaba, even when he was mayor of Johannesburg, is the issue of illegal immigrants. This is the
Big
one
story.
thing, if you think about Herman Mashaba, this is the one thing you hear them talk about all the time. And so it'll be interesting to see is that something that resonates across the board nationally, and does that translate into votes? It'll be interesting to see how the EFF, and you can see how the EFF kind of performs in metropolitan areas, because their very big thing is about land, but they don't resonate in rural areas, because what people in rural areas have land, and they know what they can and cannot do with that land. In fact, there are many, many people leaving the rural areas to live in shacks, small confined spaces in the urban areas, because what they are looking for is opportunity and work and money, and that's not coming from the land. Therefore, the EFF can't make a shift in rural areas. So
Um,
those are the things that
there's
we must look out for.
there's obviously skullduggery that starts to happen around this time also, when politicians and parties are campaigning, and I'm worried about these Tembisa protests, because Tembisa is a huge township. There are lots and lots of people who live there. This may be a small agitated group of people, but essentially 4 people died during these protests, and they're saying it's because of heavy-handed police action. The mayor is being summoned by the community. The COGTA minister, the cooperative governance minister, has been there, Lebogang Maile, I think. And
MMC, provincial.
MMC.
No, he's
That's
provincial.
They're being called in to take control of the situation. But really, this is just, I think, agitation by the ANC that they're losing ground. They're very embarrassed that they don't have a Kuruleni anymore. And I suppose they're trying to hold someone accountable for that, because they would never hold themselves accountable for it. The ANC doesn't know what that looks like. What do you think these Tembisa protests tell us? Is my reading any good, or do you have a better understanding?
Should I
Dumo, you
start?
go
Okay.
first.
Go
Yeah.
for it, Dumo, yeah.
Okay, cool. I think there's an element of the ANC trying to take advantage of the situation. I mean, even the DA said that. Let me not say the DA, but some members of the DA have alleged that the ANC are actually behind those protests. I mean, I read an article in the Daily Maverick where it looks like the reason behind the protests was actually the subsidies being removed for electricity and water and everything like that. Sounds a bit minuscule for such a protest, and also the response by the police as well. But that could be the case. But I think ultimately, now that we want all these high-ranking officials to go to the township and to, keep the situation under control. Yeah, I just think that's also some sort of political play by the ANC, just trying to remain relevant in those places. Because again, Tembisa is under Ekurhuleni, and Ekurhuleni is run by the DA. So I think it's in the ANC's best interest probably to try and stay relevant in that area, so that they can actually try get Ekurhuleni back in future elections. So I think there probably is some sort of instigation. There might be, but also at the same time, it could be an actual grievance. But it just seems a bit too coincidental, and you know what I mean. So
We were just
yeah.
talking about the number by-elections, and by-elections happen in wards, and
Mhm.
Ekurhuleni has 112 wards.
Yeah.
Tembisa is one ward out of 112 wards that make up that Ekurhuleni metropole. And what and so and these things are important, because you've got to see who has what kind of power. But the thing about these levels of protests and destructive protests, it's also because there are so many people that are at home. not working, and protests. And remember in July last year, and I said to you guys that the thing about protests and these is it's exciting activity because there's a whole mentality of a mob happening in this environment, and so it's easy for it to flare up and become such a story on what the issue may be. So the issue may be that there were tariffs that have been removed or subsidies that have been removed, and what you then see is you can see how you can very easily, even if you just look at the images of the people that are out there protesting, these are little kids out in the streets, these are kind of teenagers that are out there burning tires, stacking up what they call the Great Wall of Tembisa. And that's what unemployment does. Unemployment makes too many idle hands in the township, right? Or in any area, for instance. And all of these people can be radicalized and shifted and moved and used for whatever nefarious thing. So it may be that the ANC councillor, ward councillor in that area has mobilized a couple of people, and that's all you really need is to spark a thing like that, is to create a little bit of excitement, and then you can attract a mob into that environment. And I think some of the reporting that we're hearing, the 4 people that are dead, I read, I think that 2 of those 4 people actually died because of an explosive device that went off as they were trying to bomb an ATM.
Oh, wow. Okay. That changes things, right?
But how, how verified is that information? How true is that? This is the era of kind of huge masses of information, eyewitness accounts that can be distorted to mean anything.
Right. And it can all be messed with by bad actors, right? I mean, there are lots of people who will twist that information to suit their political ends. And we know that the politicians are the ones we should least trust when it comes to information. We've learned that very hard and the hard way.
And remember, Ekurhuleni is a coalition government. It's led by the DA, but it is a coalition government. But what you also saw in that environment is, and we see it everywhere, from Cyril Ramaphosa right down to, a mayor in a coalition, is leadership. Because these are the instances where what you are needing and what you're looking for is you're looking for decisive action. You're looking for a person who can make a decision, speak with the people, engage. Part of actually what escalated this was the fact that the mayor did not show up to a community engagement last week, Friday.
Yeah.
But then what happens between Saturday and Sunday when all of this is being planned? Again, shows kind of the collapse of our policing system and our intelligence system, because this thing does not get planned by 2 people in a house or by themselves. There are WhatsApps that are going out. There are people being mobilized, all of that information, and they just weren't ready. They kind of didn't think that it was going to be what it is. On Sunday night already, most of us knew that this protest was coming. We didn't know the scale of it, but we knew it was coming. And did the Ekurhuleni Metro Police respond appropriately? Were they ready? Are they sufficiently trained to deal with riots of this nature? All of those things are what we are seeing here, the collapse of all of those kinds of systems as well.
All right, so let's turn our attention to something else, unless you want to add something on the Tembisa protests, Dumo. Anything you want to add there?
Are we going to talk about Nancy Pelosi and Taiwan?
Nothing from our side, no.
All right, let's move to that. I mean, we haven't done international stuff for a little bit, and this morning we've avoided it completely. The audience gets upset when we don't pay enough attention to our own local issues. I think we've done that now. We've got like 15 minutes left. Let's do this. So Nancy Pelosi, the speaker, who's the 3rd highest ranking member of the US government, decided she was going to take a plane and land in Taiwan. And she's received enormous criticism for this, but she's also received a huge amount of praise from certain quarters. Essentially, what this boils down to is thwarting China. China have said time and time again they do not recognize Taiwan. They will, if they have their way, absorb Taiwan into the People's Republic of China. They consider it a bit of a shameful and embarrassing thing that the island of Formosa is occupied by a government that also calls itself China. And of course, this is also strategically a very important place because they manufacture most of the world's very high-end superconductors, the stuff that we have in our cell phones, the stuff that we have in our cars, the stuff that we have in our laptops. Without Taiwan, we're all in a big mess. And the US in particular, who has a huge demand for these superconductors. If you can't get them from Taiwan, the next best place to get them is South Korea. And only about third or fourth is China, because theirs are vastly inferior. But China have this game they're playing with the rest of the world, and particularly America, where they're basically saying, look, we can take Taiwan anytime we like. We've seen how you guys pulled out of Afghanistan. We've seen how powerless you've been to resist Vladimir Putin in Ukraine. We're not afraid of you. And they were saying some quite threatening things about, Nancy Pelosi shouldn't land here. She's taking a huge chance. The People's Republic of China do not approve of this decision. America themselves, including Joe Biden's spokesperson and Antony Blinken, who I think he was here this week in South Africa, had quite a lot to say about how, they still believe in the one China policy, almost as if to placate China. Nancy Pelosi went in. She landed. China did nothing. It's a PR win for America. It's a PR loss for China.
Well,
But
China
what do you make?
didn't do what they said they would. I mean, China
Correct.
said they
They said
would
they'd
shoot down her plane.
Right.
They didn't do that, but what they have done is, and they've now announced that they a strategic military exercises, which is also what Putin said was happening in that Donetsk region, right? Strategic military exercises. So we've seen some images of Chinese tanks kind of mobilizing in a direction. But remember, I said last week, it's going to be interesting to see who blinks first. So America definitely didn't blink first because Nancy has gone there. This morning, when I was just reading up on some of what's happening, because then unfortunately we don't get a lot of news coming out of China, so we don't know what China is thinking or what they are doing. But we do know that they've called the ambassador. So Beijing have called the ambassador, the American ambassador, to have chats. But they're also reporting that in the US, they have also called the Chinese ambassador, and there's some kind of back channel talks that have been opened up. Because we have been talking about China and America beating the drums of war for a number of years. And this is one of those moments, and China's been saying, America, don't try us. And America have tried them. And now we're just waiting with bated breath to see if China does what they said they would do. A little bit like what happened with, on the other side, Russia and the Ukraine and the EU. Vlad kept saying, don't try me. Don't move past these lines. And, and they kept pushing. They kept pushing the envelope and pushing the envelope. And Vlad didn't blink. He went in there and, and even though we all agree that it is now a war of attrition, he didn't blink. And unfortunately, the EU and the UN and the US have not come in support of the Ukraine as we thought they would. And therefore, there's this stalemate, this ongoing war, which essentially has wiped Ukraine off the face of the economic planet.
So what do we think this means in terms of like this constant strong man, this game, this power play between the global powers? I mean, China has clearly lost face from this situation. Russia gained from theirs. The US generally is in decline. I think worldwide, everybody's more or less of the agreed opinion that the US is no longer the hegemonic superpower that it used to be. Dumo, is there a vacuum? Or do you think that the US still has some fight left in it? And Nancy Pelosi, of all people, has just proven it. You tell me.
I think domestically, Biden, the Democrats and everyone, they need to show that they still have some sort of power. So it is in their best interest that they actually challenged China on this. It's good for their base in the United States. So I think that's the reason why they went through with this. I think they did their calculations and they saw that, look, China's not really interested in a war. They like to perform wolf warrior politics. They love doing that. So I think they knew that, look, they really weren't going to shoot down the plane, really. I mean, if they did that, then China would be involved in a war, and I don't think China is ready for one. In my opinion, I think that they're not at that point where they can actually challenge the other superpowers. Maybe in some point in the future they will be able to do it, but today, not so much. So I think, again, it was just them just doing what they usually do, and the United States just playing the game the way they think they should be played. So ultimately, I think from China's perspective, since they close up their media anyway, they're probably going to cook up a story to their own citizens. And then for the United States, they also win because now they say, look, we went up against China and we won. So now, we are strong in some sense. And maybe that could just be a way of them just hiding the fact that they actually are not becoming a superpower, or they're losing their superpower status. So it's very interesting seeing what we're seeing now. But I mean, will it escalate? I don't know. I don't think either party wants this to escalate. United States has got nuclear weapons. I don't know if China has. They probably have. I mean, come on. I don't think they want to get to that point. So I think the CCP will go into their circles and say, listen, we'll take this loss, no worries, but let's just move on from here. But I don't think they're going to try anything funny, no.
I wish I
I hope you're
understood
right.
a little bit more of what Nancy Pelosi is selling. I don't think it was just, I think there's something else happening there underneath the surface, which we don't know yet, or at least I haven't seen and haven't been able to kind of
What do you mean,
uncover
Pumps?
in
That sounds very
everything that
cryptic.
I've read. No, it's not cryptic at all. I think that there is something else that Nancy Pelosi is selling more than just it's America. I mean, it's been 25 years. Again, we spoke about this last year. The last time somebody this high ranking went to on with a delegation to Taiwan was Newt Gingrich. 25 years. What is so important at this point in time that Nancy Pelosi would risk starting a war with China for her to land in Taiwan and
Hmm.
and be there? What is so important right now? And we can't see it. We can't see it on the surface of it. And there were many reports that within the administration they did try and dissuade Nancy from making this trip.
Oh, really? So
Yes,
not everyone was
widely
on
reported.
board. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
See,
widely reported.
we're getting such mixed signals from the Biden administration because honestly, I don't think the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. A lot of the time, I think that Joe Biden is definitely out of it. So there are other people who are making these decisions and obviously vying for power and vying for authority. And maybe that's part of the reason that it's so confusing. And maybe China is also seeing this as a gap. They're looking at this going, well, clearly the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. So this is a good time for us to grab some power, only to find that they're thwarted by an old political fox like Nancy Pelosi. Who knows?
A hell of an old political fox with a lot of money and a lot of, I see Congo Chris here saying not a lot of people talk about her wealth or the sources of that wealth. So she does
Yeah.
have family money, but
Well,
her
she's got a
husband
very
is
rich
also in
husband
business.
who's a stock trader
Her
and
husband is
has
also in
made
business, and what
he's made some very questionable investments. Let's just put it that way, that have relied quite heavily upon Nancy's ability to tell him about what legislation might be pending. But that's just speculation, of course.
absolutely, and
Not speculation,
unfortunately,
completely true.
Taiwan is a small pawn in this
Mm,
entire thing, very similar to what has happened to the Ukraine. So Ukraine are now indefinitely in debt, the kind of debt that they have amassed in the past couple of months with
mhm.
Russia, and with Russia's move has really put them in an incredible. They've lost talent in terms of the number of people who have run from the Ukraine. They have debt that they're going to have to pay back. And I read a thing about the fact that they're actually expected to start paying back the debt even now during the war. It's
Yeah.
just unfortunate. It's an unfortunate situation. And that's why I'm saying I wish I understood what it is that Nancy was selling.
I think that's a good question. Congo Chris has a question. He says, Sis Phumi, what is South Africa's stance on Taiwan? Well, we are obviously no fans and no friends of Taiwan, unfortunately. We should be. We choose very strange bedfellows, but I think we need the People's Republic of China's money a whole lot more than we need the Taiwanese. And
How
we're
Congo.
definitely on the side of China, right, Phumi? I mean, there's no.
Congo Chris should know by now. Congo Chris should know by now that nobody has any clue what South Africa's stance is. Sometimes
On
the
any-
presidency might have a particular stance, and the department and DIRCO might have their own stance, and the two don't necessarily sit in the same side of the fence.
Yeah.
So we have no idea until we see the tweets.
That's the only way we know for sure. All right, that's a good
when
point.
we see the tweets, then we'll know.
That's a very good point. Speaking of all of this, have you guys also been paying attention to what's been happening in Europe with their power? Because we're not the only country that's having power outages. In fact, Europe is staring down a very, very cold, very expensive winter, thanks to what's going on in Russia and the Ukraine at the moment. I mean, of course, to point out here that Russian gas and oil is a major contributor to Europe's economy, but also to heating through the very cold European winters. And they're looking at an undersupply of electricity, an undersupply of gas. This, of course, is going to lead to a huge amount of dissatisfaction in those countries. What do you think the political ramifications of the war in the Ukraine and of governments that have increasingly gone for green and sustainable energy, which is not at this point strong enough to be able to recoup their losses on coal-fired or Russian-powered energy sources?
In preparation.
What's going to happen? What's going to
In
happen?
preparation, they're beginning to fire up some of those old fire stations, those coal-powered
coal
fire
ones.
stations.
The ones that we still
Right.
use.
The
Yeah.
ones that we've been told, the ones that we have been told, and listen, with lots of money coming, that isn't it? Cyril Ramaphosa signed quite a lucrative agreement about moving to cleaner and more sustainable energy
Mhm.
and moving away from coal.
Mhm.
And yet, guess what?
Yeah.
They're firing up their coal-powered fire stations.
Yeah. So what does this mean for green energy? But what does it mean politically for Europe, Dumo? What do you think?
I think in future elections, people are going to vote out these green movement parties. I just think people, at the end of the day, they don't really care what their governments do until their government starts to, introduce policies that affect their lifestyle. So now, if the winters are going to be really cold now because of the Russia-Ukraine war, I think there'll be pressure from people saying that, listen, let's just end this war. Like, okay, can you not put Zelensky and Putin in a room and let them just talk it out, because really this winter's getting really cold, right? That type of thing. So I think it might lead to that. Bit speculative, but I think that's what could happen politically. And I think ultimately the people that are pumping money into this green energy stuff, I mean, they're going to really have a tough time trying to sell it now because, here's the perfect time for green energy to, show what it's worth. And it looks like it's not showing much if countries are actually firing up their old power stations. So it just shows you what it's worth, really.
This is the lowest ebb that the green movement has probably ever had, because when people are cold and they desperately need power, and we've realized in South Africa having power is kind of essential, all of those best ideas about the environment just disappear into the back burner, right? Back burner, if you'll pardon the pun. Right. All right. Well, guys, that's all we got time for today. I would love to carry on talking to you, and there's still many other things on the agenda that we could have got to this morning. Thank you for all the comments this morning, and we're very, very pleased to have all of your feedback. If you've got any ideas, things that you would like us to be focused on in the Burning Platform in forthcoming episodes. Got some incredible guests lined up. Dumo, thanks for standing in for us this morning. It's always great to hear you. And you've always got very, very interesting opinions and insights into what's going on. Phumi, I'm glad you got to be an election nerd again this morning for the first time in a long time. And hopefully your attention that you're paying to these by-elections will bear fruit for us in forthcoming larger and more kind of persuasive elections.
We're going to have, you know what we should do when we must talk to Greg about it? We're going to have to cut all of the little things that we've spoken about, that we've predicted when they all happen in 2024. Watch this space.
Okay. All right. Let's do that, because I think people love it when you're held to account. People love it when you're right, and people love it when you're wrong. So let's see.
And you can change the Burning Platform to the crystal ball. because that's what it's going to look like. That's what it's going to look like. People are going to be
That
like,
would be a
we
thing.
saw this shit coming.
Well, listen, I've often said if you could cut some of our comments from the first couple of weeks of the pandemic and lockdowns, Dumo, you said things that all came true, that everyone now is pretty much saying is standard wisdom. I said some things. Phumi, you said some things. So we've been the crystal ball before. Maybe we will be again. Let's see. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a happy day. Cheers.